Hello, and welcome to our latest episode of the Kith Kin Podcast, Stories from the Hospitality Industry. I'm really happy to welcome Josh here to tell us all about the ups and downs that have brought him to where he is today, and of course, about what makes the hospitality industry so special. So, hi, thank you for coming and joining me with this conversation. So, can you just start with an introduction to who you are and what you do?
Yeah, hi Cassie. Thank you so much for having me on. My name's Josh. I have been in the hospitality industry sort of roughly since I was about 16, so a good almost 20 years. And I'm based in Leicester, and I currently work at Café 55, which is a non-profit community cafe in Thurnby village. So I'm the cafe manager and one of the team of directors as well. And I've been here, we opened in March 2024, so pretty recently, but I have now been part of the team for about a year since last September. So that's what I currently do.
And I must say that I've been to the cafe a couple of times and it is just so lovely. Anyway, we'll come back to the cafe in a minute, but let's start with your story. So how did you start in hospitality? How did you get there? And what made you fall in love with it?
Absolutely. So for me, I would say that my journey in hospitality started pretty much when I was born, and not in the sort of usual way where your parents work in a pub or whatever it is. No, my dad was a designer in London and my mum worked for the NHS. But our home was always open to people all the time. We were part of a church community, and that was a huge part of what we did was host people and offer hospitality and sit around a table and talk and eat. And I could tell you 100 stories of wonderful times doing that with friends and people we'd never met before, but would just turn up. And it was, that was the kind of environment I grew up in. And then as I started working, I just fell into, rather than getting into kind of retail and shops, I just fell into hospitality. And so my first sort of proper job, other than a paper round, was in a kids' indoor soft play. So I originally started as kind of just an ordinary member of staff. I think I actually got the job because in the group interview, I told them I did magic tricks. So I used to be a sort of low-key close-up magician and party entertainer, and so I think they were very keen on having that as part of the team. So I joined the team, and then very quickly I got moved into a role where I was hosting the parties. So, the one calling over the tannoy, could everyone in Katie's party please come to the, and then I would entertain them for an hour or so and make it a wonderful experience for them and their families, and then send them off on their way with a party bag full of tat and sticky lollies. As part of that, I occasionally would dress up as a giant monkey, but usually I was hosting the parties. So I did that, then moved on to doing evening parties at that place for grown-ups. I used to call them adult parties, but people get the wrong idea. So now I just go with parties for grown-ups.
Grown-ups.
Exactly. Again, hosting people, providing catering, all that kind of stuff, and generally being a kind of positive spirit, giving people a brilliant time and hosting them. Then I went to university up here in Leicester. So I used to live in Essex. And moved to Leicester to go to university, at which point I studied music technology. So really not hospitality related at all. But I kind of kept my foot in. I did a stint at McDonald's for a while, and I think I particularly found my gift because they put me on the chips station for one day and immediately told me I was getting back on the tills. Back when there used to be proper tills at McDonald's, and I would host people coming in, and they.
Yes, I was going to ask you: is that because you were? Is that because you were so bad at making chips, or was it because you were so good with people?
I think it was probably the latter, but probably a bit of the former as well. I just found my gift was more in surprising people with the level of service they would find in a McDonald's restaurant. And so I very quickly became part of the team, and they sent me out on parades and all sorts. But there was a little stint. I loved my time at McDonald's. I thought it was brilliant. I made it my aim to bring the absolute best service I could in an environment that is not always known for its brilliant service. And so that was my kind of aim. Didn't work for a while. And then out of university, I was looking for jobs in film, jobs in music. And my wife used to work for Costa Coffee. And we went into a cafe in Leicester city centre one day, and her old manager was the manager there. And she said, "Oh, have you got any jobs?" And he said, "Is it for you? Because you can have one today." She said, "Oh, it's actually for my husband." And he said, "Well, get him to send a CV and we'll see what we can do." So I sent a CV, and he gave me a call the next day and said, "I like your CV. It's very colourful. Would you like to come for a trial shift?" So I did. And I ended up working at that cafe for 7 years and spent about 3 of those as the general manager there. During that time, we opened a restaurant, opened a pub, closed a pub, and did all sorts of other fun things too. So they're still going strong. And then I left there, had a very short job for various reasons, and then went freelance for a while. So I became a coffee consultant. I would work with people on their training materials, design work, photography work, social media. And I also worked sort of part-time for a Costa Coffee in a place called Lutterworth. Again, just loved it. I loved getting stuck in. I loved the small community that we had there. And I also loved, I'd worked for an independent coffee shop for 7 years, and I loved going into a chain and seeing how that was run and how I could implement that back into independent coffee shops and cafes, which, let's be honest, are often notorious for doing things a bit haphazardly. So I think we have a lot to learn from the chains.
It's really interesting you say that, because I used to, when I was training my staff, I used to use, because you've worked for McDonald's, but obviously it's what Costa's using some of those same systems. But as I used to point out how much we can, even as a really small venue, how much you can learn from those companies and how they're doing it, because it's all about the systemization of what they're doing to create the efficiencies. But when you can do that, you create the opportunities, therefore, for the flair and the customer service and all of those things. So, but I agree with you. There's so much to learn from the big chains.
I also think that they teach great work ethic, and they just have great systems. And so if I see McDonald's or Costa or another chain on somebody's CV, I'll at least give them a conversation, because I think it's such a brilliant experience, particularly for young people just starting out in work. To start out in a place like that is such an opportunity. So would highly recommend. Where was I? Oh yes. So no, that's absolutely fine. I'm easily distracted. So I worked freelance for a while, and then in Costa part-time, and then and it was nice not to manage people for a while, to be honest. And then I had a job offer from a coffee roaster in Nottingham called Outpost Coffee Roasters, and that was a brilliant opportunity for me, because I went in as their wholesale manager, and it was 2 years of intense exposure to the coffee industry, the specialty coffee industry, which I was already sort of sunk into, but that was a different level. We would do 5 days of London Coffee Festival. We would have a stand every single year. We grew during that time and got really, fairly well known in the coffee industry. And it was a lovely small team. We had a brilliant time. And so I spent 2 years there learning everything there is to know about coffee, although I've got plenty more to learn. And then the final step was that I was approached by, probably about 4 or 5 people came to me and said, "Hey, Josh, there's this place opening in Thurnby. It's a cafe. It's in a park. It's being kind of founded by a church, and think you'd be great. They're looking for a manager." They've already kind of tried to hire people, but with not much success. So, yes. And I put it off for ages, because I thought in a park, and you're from the UK, park cafes are not historically the highest quality. I wasn't sure about working with volunteers, and I have a real heart for quality and wanting to bring excellence into whatever I do. And so often those things don't come together in that. But then eventually, after being pestered and pestered and pestered, I went and had a conversation, and I was just blown away by the plans that they had in place, the progress that had already been made, the investment that was going into it, the generosity of people who were involved. And so I applied, and I got the job, and here I am doing it. And we opened in March.
And actually, I think what's really, because I know the cafe, so I think what's really interesting about it, and I think you've sort of alluded to it, it isn't what people would typically expect of either a park cafe or a church tea room. It's neither of those two things, is it? It's I mean, you explain.
Yeah, so we serve what I think is some of the best coffee in the country. It's quite funny, really, because I'm a bit of a coffee nerd, and our coffee setup is designed around everything I learned from people in my last job, where I was working with loads of cafes and venues and hospitality places, and I saw it done really well, but I also saw it done really badly. And so our kind of coffee setup is an accumulation of that experience and knowledge, and so it's the nicest coffee setup I've worked on ever. But you would never know that if you didn't know anything about coffee. You would just think, great, they're having a good time. That's really our aim, is to deliver just brilliant quality product, but in an environment that is full of welcome and community and help and hope for everybody. And we just want to do that to the absolute highest level we can. So the team we've got here is exceptional, and the way they look after our customers makes me really, really proud. So that's really what we're trying to cultivate here, is something that I love, the idea of people walking in, knowing it's kind of run by a church, knowing it is a charity, knowing it is in a park, and thinking, oh, it's going to be one thing, and then walking in and just being blown away. I hope we're achieving that to some extent. We've got a long way to go, but I hope we're doing some of it.
No, and absolutely. And I think it's a real testament to this idea that just because it is community, just because it is volunteers and the church, that it doesn't need to mean, therefore, that the quality isn't there, that actually the quality is the standard in any case. And you can have a really nice, good quality experience at the same time as serving a community. And I think the cafe does it so well, because I know that at the same time that you are doing community work, you're working with community groups within the cafe, and you've got spaces to do that. You've also got a really lovely environment for people to come and work on their laptop for the day. It's not, it doesn't feel like, as I say, it doesn't feel like a church tea room, does it? It's a proper cafe that has this purpose, which is to serve the community. And I think that's just, it's such a lovely thing.
Oh, thank you. I think a lot of it comes from just 10 years of thinking about what it means to build a space for community. I think, on the surface, we'll have a big table so that people can sit together, or we will. I think often people just open spaces and they do what they want to do because they love that thing, and often it's great. But I think of I don't know if you've heard of this idea of like third spaces. So there's a kind of social...
I preach third space, yes.
Yes, Cassie, I love it. But just for those, if you're completely new to it, the idea of a third space is you've got your home is your first space, your work is your second space, and third places are these spaces in between, which essentially offer escape from the pressures of home and work, but also a place that you can come and be welcome and free to experience and to live in community with others. There's way more to it than that. But you might use examples of like the traditional English pub, or even in some communities that they're like local barbershop. But for us, I'm in the coffee industry. Often spaces are built around the owner or the director's kind of desire for what they want from a space. Whereas what we're trying to create is a space that just, there's a seat at the table for absolutely anybody. I love the idea of people walking out of here and just thinking that was, I don't know why, but that was just a brilliant and lovely experience. And something in me wants to go back. So yeah, that's what we're trying to create. Really,
absolutely, and and that whole concept of third place gives your cafe that purpose, and it's what the only difference between what you're doing or what has been created at your cafe is that has come from a community group and the church themselves that said we want to do this. But actually, for many successful businesses in the hospitality space, whether that is coffee shops, cafes, and you say pubs, exactly, when they have that purpose in the first place, and that purpose being, around the third space ideas, that is when they find their success and achieve that. So yeah, absolutely. I'm so pleased you spoke about third space. I honestly, I go on about it all the time. I'm always going third space, third space, and people go, what? Yeah. Brilliant. I love it.
I love explaining to people what it's all about, but also the power of it in our communities. So what we find more and more is, particularly with like the internet and social media, but even the way that town planning is done, is that we find more and more estates, communities, where to get to a third space, whatever it is, you would have to get in a car and drive somewhere. And we just close in on ourselves. And there is so many benefits to going out into a space. Where I live, there's a lovely little youth club and cafe. And that is the epitome for me of a third space. It's really salt of the earth. It's lovely. But people just are there often, all the time. It's brilliant.
And this is what's so exciting about the prospects for the hospitality industry, because the hospitality industry has always provided these third spaces, but actually what is happening in our society, as you say, and our communities, is we're losing so many. So previously you would have had people, back, however long ago, when people used to go to church all the time or go to their religious places all the time, they were third spaces. And even our community libraries, they were third spaces, and these spaces that we're not using anymore or are declining actually means that the hospitality industry and its opportunity to provide that for communities is becoming more and more important, and at the same time, it, as I say, it gives hospitality industries their purpose. I mean, what we are really all about, we're not about serving food and drink, although good quality coffee is helpful. It does help.
It's helpful.
Yeah, brilliant.
Absolutely.
So just in your journey, just so because we talk about sort of, when people get to where they're getting to, that actually some of the most important periods when they actually do the biggest learning are actually through the mistakes they make. Is there a, what I mean, what's your biggest mistake is quite an open question, but I mean, is there sort of a clear thing where you've actually sort of gone down the wrong path, or something's happened that actually you've learned something quite from?
Goodness me, I don't know who says it, but the path to success is paved with mistakes. And I am like a testament to that, really. Partly because my only learning has been by doing and by getting it wrong often, regularly, and I still do. You only have to ask my team and they'll tell you that. But I think it's not a specific scenario, though I could name a few examples of it. But I think as I was thinking about this question, one of the biggest mistakes that I have made and suffered for is hiring too quickly and with urgency, and forgetting that that how much damage that can do. I'm sure, Cassie, you've been in similar situations, but it's coming up to a busy season in the cafe or bar or restaurant, whatever it is, and suddenly two of your key members of staff say, oh, actually, I've had an offer elsewhere, or I'm going off to uni, or whatever it is. And you think, oh no, we're in trouble. So you put the adverts out, you get a bunch of people come in, or maybe you don't get that many people come in at all, because you just didn't advertise it very widely. And you sit someone down with an interview and you quickly scribble some questions down on a bit of paper, and you ask what you think are the questions you need, but you don't have much purpose behind it. And you think, they smiled when they walked in and they weren't awful, so yep, we'll get them in. But you don't plan in like a 90-day review. You don't do any of that, because you just need a body, right? We've all been there. So sometimes you don't even do a trial. You rarely check references, and suddenly you're in your head you're going, oh, I can always go back on this decision. But you're working with human beings with lives and people, and it's never as simple as just going. I mean, I know ruthless hiring people who will just go, you're not right, you're out. I'm not like that. I don't know if the best people in hospitality are like that, because we're people first businesses, aren't we? And suddenly you have this human being who is in your responsibility. You're giving them a job, you're their livelihood, but you hired them too fast. You didn't have a purpose, and I've done this plenty of times, because we're very forgetful people, aren't we? And so you end up 6 months down the line where all your staff are coming to you every day going, oh, this person is driving me mad. You do every training and disciplinary meeting under the sun, and it just doesn't stick. And eventually it just crashes and burns, and not before a lot of damage has been done to the trust your staff have in you, and your customers' experience, because they see everything going on. And so I've made that mistake far too many times, and I'm sure I'll make it in the future. But that's definitely a big one for me, is hiring too fast and rashly.
It's so true. Yeah, I can think of goodness knows how many examples of that. I did get better at it as time went on, in terms of recognizing that that's what was happening. But even then, it's tough, because as you say, you're dealing with people, and anyway, brilliant. Thank you so much. Could you just let people know how they can find you and your cafe? I will obviously put all the contact details in our show notes so people can find them. But yes, if you could just tell
that's
people.
Brilliant. Yeah, thanks. So if you want to get in touch with me, I talk about hospitality and that kind of thing all the time, particularly on Instagram. So you can find me just by my name, Josh Shirtcliffe, all one word, Shirtcliffe with an E on the end. If you want to find the cafe, we are Café 55, and that's with words, not the number. And if you Google that, Café 55 Thurnby, you'll find us. We're on Instagram as well, and Facebook, Café 55. So yeah, look us up, get in touch. I am an open book when it comes to chatting about hospitality and coffee, of course. So yeah, please do reach out. I'd love to chat.
Thank you, Josh. That is absolutely amazing, and genuinely, your enthusiasm and passion for the industry is really infectious. So thank you very much.
Oh, thanks, Cassie. And thanks for your involvement too, and everything you're doing, because it is just unprecedented. Is that the right word? It's brilliant. So keep it up.
I'll take it. Thank you.
Pleasure.